Man, Bungie really can't catch a break lately, can they? Marathon's player population slowly bleeding out, Destiny 2, their former golden goose, has been on life support for all of 2026, and then Sony had their latest earnings report in which they recorded a $565 million impairment loss against Bungie. This comes after Sony already recorded a $200 million impairment loss on Bungie. So to say things are looking bleak would be an understatement, despite what Bungie fanboys will have you believe. They like to pretend things are hunky-dory and everything's going well for Marathon because it's some amazing great masterpiece and you just don't see the vision, or you're a chud hater. But no, I just live in reality, and the reality is there just isn't a ton of widespread appeal for a game that essentially resets all your progress on death. Yes, I'm aware there's a wider meta progression through factions and stuff, but mostly if you die, you lose everything, and Bungie is trying to actively appeal to more casuals by implementing different systems that aren't so punishing, like better starter kits or a map that works similar to a battle royale. But the truth is, there's tons of battle royales already that don't cost $40 up front. I played Marathon, and sure, the gunplay is good, but that big leg up that Bungie once had with best-in-class shooting, well, that market moat is rapidly dwindling. This isn't 2010 anymore. Other studios have figured out how to make good-feeling first-person shooters. So then you look at the extraction genre, a genre that's already niche, and you ask yourself, what does Marathon offer that the others don't? Now, admittedly, I'm not a big extraction shooter fan, but I have played Marathon, Arc Raiders, and Hunt Showdown. It seems Marathon's biggest draw is that it's more hardcore than all the rest, though some still argue that Escape from Tarkov holds that crown. I won't pretend that I'm qualified to answer that question because I really don't know. What I do know is that super hardcore extraction shooters don't have huge mass market appeal. Now, before you start screaming in the comments, I don't want to get it twisted. Yes, some people do love a hardcore aspect to gaming. In fact, many people really love competitive shooters when you look at how popular a game like CSGO is, or Valorant, or Rainbow Six Siege, or different genres like League of Legends or Dota or Apex Legends. Lots of people love to sweat. The problem is, Marathon is late to the party. Destiny had a huge advantage of being super early to the live service model, essentially being a live service light before that genre of game even had a name for it. The beauty of this is people got integrated into that loop early. Back in 2017, when Destiny 2 released, Fortnite was still on the verge of its big breakout. The gaming landscape was vastly different then. Now you have all these live services competing with one another to become a player's main game. But why would people leave their main game that they have hundreds or thousands of hours and dollars put into? Hint, most won't. Arc Raiders released a massive commercial success, but it's an outlier. The norm is for most of these games to fail. We saw it with Concord, we saw it with Highguard. Hell, just last month we saw it with Last Flag, a PvP shooter from a studio founded by the lead singer of Imagine Dragons. It couldn't even launch to over 1,000 players on Steam. It's honestly quite sad. I know a lot of time and effort and money and resources went into these projects, so it sucks to see them fail. But the reality is, people only have so much time to play different games, and we have more options now than ever. On top of having more and more video games to play every year, we also have games that are lasting longer than ever. Back in the day, you would play a game over and over because you just had fewer options. Now you can play a new game every week if you want. And if you're in a live service ecosystem, then you aren't really playing many other games to begin with. You're just playing the main one that you like to play all the time. So your backlog gets bigger and bigger, or maybe you hop onto the new hotness. It worked with Marvel Rivals and Helldivers 2 and Arc Raiders, but like I said, it's very hard to penetrate into that market. And Marathon gave it a good effort, but again, the fact of the matter is it doesn't appeal to casuals that much, and the hardcore players that would like it are playing other games. Then you throw in the fact that the game is ravaged by cheaters in a game where dying wipes out tons of progress. That's a recipe for disaster. Then you have the other side of the coin, where as people get fed up with the game and leave, that leaves only the most dedicated players around to play it, which sort of cannibalizes the rest of your player base. Every single match is now a total sweatfest, and despite top players saying that this is what they want, I see a whole lot of bitching on Twitter about the matchmaking being totally fucked now, and streamers are only matching other streamers, so oh man, it's so unfair. And to be clear, I believe them all about level-based matchmaking, or key-based matchmaking. I know how Bungie works, but they do that more so casuals won't get destroyed and quit the game, but then it makes it less enjoyable for the most dedicated players. As I write this script on a Sunday afternoon, Marathon is sitting at 12,500 players with a peak of 15,000. Destiny 2 has 11,000 players with a peak of 12,400. A month ago, I checked in on Marathon to see how it was performing a month since release. It was peaking at around 30,000 players. I thought, damn, that's not great, but it's still decently healthy. I figured surely they won't fall off too much from here and probably level off around 25,000 peak concurrence. Then another week goes by. Okay, surely the floor is around 20,000. Another week? Okay, where is the floor? 15,000? Well, in the last week, they had some peaks down at 13,000, with their high points being 15,000 on the weekend. And I get it, extraction shooters are designed around wipes, and this is totally normal for the genre and yada yada. But the truth is, this is not a healthy and thriving game. Not for a game with a rumored budget of around $250 million. It is barely getting more players than Destiny 2, a game that came out in 2017, had its endgame moment in the final shape in the summer of 2024, then had a horrendous expansion last summer in Edge of Fate, and has literally been on life support for all of 2026. Literally no new content and just being limped along. That game has almost as many peak daily players on Steam as the game that came out 2 months ago. I was seeing tweets like a month into Marathon of people reminiscing about the hashtag Marathon Takeover days. A month in, like bro, this game should still be thriving. Arc Raiders was doing better a month into its lifespan than it did at launch. It actually grew over that time period, where Marathon just continues to slide. And with Bungie having had numerous layoffs over the years, they have less staff support than ever, and now they're trying to balance 2 live service games instead of 1. A bunch of shares vest from the Sony acquisition this June, and I suspect we'll get some info on the long-term future of Bungie then, but right now, it is looking bleak as hell. Sony has had to take 2 impairment losses on the studio in the last year to the tune of a total of $768 million. What this means is essentially an unexpected and permanent drop in a fixed or intangible asset's value to a market value that's less than what's recorded on a company's balance sheet. The amount is recorded as a loss on the income statement. This means that Sony is admitting that Bungie is worth less than what they paid for it. About $750 million less. That is a horrible return on your investment. And this is at a time when Destiny 2 is performing worse than it ever has, and they just launched a big new title in Marathon. So how bleak will it be by the end of 2026, when those franchises continue to bleed players because of Bungie's incompetence? As I said, June will have a lot more answers, but I would not be surprised at all to see Sony scrap Bungie for parts and look to move Sony in a new direction. The live service chase has been a colossal failure by every metric. Concord losing hundreds of millions of dollars, your live service expert studio acquisition in Bungie being a massive overpayment, and paying way less dividends than expected, live service titles on the horizon such as Horizon Hunter's Gathering and Fair Games, which also look to be total busts in the making. But to bring it back to Bungie, I truly don't see how they turn this around. Many people point to Rainbow Six Siege's turnaround, but again, the gaming landscape was vastly different back then. It launched in 2016 and slowly grew over time. People had way less to play back then, and game development cost a fuck of a lot less back then. This allowed studios to have a much longer runway to fix their game. We saw Highguard claim that they were in it for the long haul, only for them to announce the closure of the game less than a month later. Like bro, how do you not have even a month of runway? Granted, I'm sure they saw the writing on the wall and decided it just wasn't worth trying to save. They just cut their losses and moved on. Sure, Sony has a lot of money, but will they really want to keep throwing good money after bad? It has been one bad event after another coming from Bungie since the acquisition, and I'm sure they're just looking to cut their losses at some point and move on. So that runway is coming to an end quite quickly, and I don't think Bungie will be able to pull up before they crash and burn. I will remind you of a Justin Truman talk speaking about the scary possibility of losing all their players and having to close up shop.
To show this visually, so this was our weekly active users for Destiny 2 in the first few months. And for comparison, this is what Destiny 1 looked like. So far, so good. But then this started happening. And this moment right here in February of 2018 was fucking terrifying. So this graph shows the trend of our weekly active users. And at the rate that we were shedding players, we did the math. I remember being in the meeting, we did the math. And if this continued for just 5 more weeks, we would run out of players. The entire population would be gone. And we were seriously looking at potentially being 1 month away from having to just close up shop on Destiny 2 altogether.
The graph in that clip looks eerily similar to the player count trends on Steam for Marathon, but luckily they have their Season 2 wipe and reset coming, which will surely bring some people back, but they have to bring it with that update. It's time to over-deliver, because if they don't, then it's curtains. You see, the time frame in that Truman clip was from Curse of Osiris, the first expansion after the launch of the game. Of course, your launch season will have a ton of players. For Marathon, that was 88,000. Not great, but healthy. But they dwindled heavily from there. So if Season 2 hits 40,000 and players know the meta by now and know the gameplay loops, then they will stick around less in Season 2 than they did in Season 1. Game launch is usually always going to have the most players, that's just how it is. And don't try to say, actually, with Lightfall from Destiny 2, because the game didn't launch on Steam back then. What I am saying is it will have a smaller base to bleed out from at the start of Season 2, and that bleed is likely to happen quicker the second time around, as it doesn't seem like they have a ton of content on the horizon, just like Curse of Osiris didn't. There's no cryo archive to save them this time. So where is that floor? 10,000 player peaks at the end of Season 2? That is the question, and time will tell. Anyways, that was it for my monthly Marathon Doomer video. I'll be back next month sometime in June because, as I said, that is when we are likely to get some big answers on the future of Bungie. If we don't, then I guess you won't see me. But if you want to see lots more of me, I'm currently streaming through Bloodborne over on Twitch at idsizzle7, so come check me out. I've beaten all the Souls games, and after Bloodborne, I'll be on to 007 First Light and then Elden Ring all summer. Oh man, I can't wait, and I hope to see you there. Anyways, yell at me in the comments about why I'm wrong and blah blah blah. So far, everything I've said about Bungie a year ago is aged like fine wine, so I'll happily say I told you so. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want. I don't even know what this channel is anymore. Go sub to my second channel instead and watch my Souls reviews. I really liked those games. Lastly, if you're still here, thanks so much for watching to the end. I appreciate it. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.